Welcome to Buckets, brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. Just flew in from Vegas. Boy, are my arms tired. That's an old joke. Today is your NBA best bets for Monday. And of course, we're going to check in with the future Jays. We'll get into the in-season tournament. We'll kind of wrap that up in a bow. We'll talk about how we managed to hedge or did not Tyrese Halliburton at exorbitant numbers to win MVP of the in-season tournament. Congrats to LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers. Long-suffering franchise finally gets a win. You always love to see it. We'll talk about best bets. I have a number of best bets. I have best bets that I made based off of the analysis that I did following the game on Saturday night and then looking at some numbers on Sunday morning as I flew back to Vegas. So we're going to get into all that and more, and you can find all that in the award-winning Action Network app. Track everything in there. You're going to want to track everything in there. The Pro Signals is a really underrated feature because what it allows you to do is it allows you to see things like, oh, so the money is coming in on the Magic, but the line is moving the other direction because significant money from people that the books at least consider to be sharp is moving it back the other way. You're not going to find that everywhere. You want to track that stuff, and you want to find the award-winning Action Network app. Also, make sure to check out youtube.com/the Action Network. You're gonna find awesome stuff. You're gonna find so much good stuff. Our happy hours for football kill it. They absolutely destroy. Sunday morning, our power hour destroys it. Just there's so much good stuff, and we'll be doing more stuff on NBA. Go to youtube.com/the Action Network and subscribe today. Joining me as always, the future Jays. I got Joe Delera and Jim Turvey. Jim Turvey is in the Action Network app and on Twitter at TurveyBets. Joe Delera is in the Action Network app and on Twitter at Joe Delera, Dellera. And yeah, boys, glad to be back with you. I am a little frazzled from spending several days in the weirdness of Las Vegas and watching the in-season tournament. Let's do best bets for Monday, and then we'll wrap up the in-season tournament. So as always, we start by giving you the picks. Jim Turvey, what have you got for me on a loaded and on a Monday where I'm going to lose a lot of money? I'm just going to go ahead and get that out of the way right now. I love the slate. I started doing bets as soon as I got back to Colorado and was like, oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. And then I look up and I'm like, well, this is not going to go well. I am overextended on Monday. What have you got for your best bets on the Monday slate?
I am with you. I think it's a really, really fun slate. There's lots of little spots to find, to dig into. I cut it down. I had even more. I cut it down to 3. And we're going to do Dallas Mavericks, Memphis Grizzlies under 227. We're going to do Nets +5. And we're going to do Isaiah Hartenstein rebound escalators.
Okay. Joe Delera, what are your best bets for the Monday slate?
I like the Minnesota Timberwolves +3.5. Nikola Vucevic over 33.5 points, rebounds, and assists. And I like Randall-related props. So I'm with you, Jim, on some Knicks pivots with Mitchell Robinson out.
I have got the Orlando Magic -2 at home versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. I've got Spurs Rockets under 224.5. I've got Nets +5.5 versus the Kings, which is absolutely my favorite bet on the board. There is no way that the Nets cover this number because of how much I love this bet. Like the sheer amount that I love this bet guarantees that they're going to light the beam and comfortably on Monday night. I will throw out a couple more. I also like the Sixers -12.5. I also like the Mavericks -2.5. I also like the Chicago Bulls +11. And I like the under in Portland and the Clippers 220. So like I said, it's a good day to bet the NBA, and you know, we'll hope how it goes well. Let's start with Joe Delera. All right, so the Minnesota Timberwolves, as I check my sheet on my fancy new monitor, as I'm very excited for this. The Minnesota Timberwolves taking on the New Orleans Pelicans, fresh off an absolute clown show performance in Las Vegas. It takes a look. I've been doing this for a long time now. It's gonna be, oh God, it's gonna be 16 years next year that I've been doing this. And so, like, you learn, like, you don't overreact to one game. You certainly don't react to a game in December. You just don't do it. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes on with these teams. You can't do it. I'm out on the Pelicans. out. Cross them off. No, they're not winning a playoff series. They're not winning a division. They're not winning. They could make the playoffs. Sure, they can get in. 8 teams get in, but I'm done with this clown show. Jim, tell me why you like the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Well, I like the Wolves in this spot. Look, I think that the Wolves have been one of the best teams in the league this year. I think they are the best team in the league so far, record wise, right? They're third in adjusted net. They're first in adjusted defense. The offense has been acceptable, right? Like it's about league average or right in the middle. The big thing, like when I looked at this line, I know that Anthony Edwards kind of popped on the report, so we'll see whether he's available or not. But to me, right now, the way that the Minnesota Timberwolves are constructed, this is a Rudy Gobert team. Like it sounds crazy to really say that, but he has completely anchored this defense. And as long as he's playing, I'm very comfortable backing the Minnesota Timberwolves. I feel like Finch has kind of gotten them in order. Like they've got that full year under their belts, all playing together. You know, you've seen that rapport between Cat and Rudy, and you know, and Ant, and the team is playing cohesively together. On the flip side, you have New Orleans, who just got an ass beating in Vegas, and I think the line is insane to me. Like I don't know why they're favored. I get that like they're healthy, they pretty much have everybody together, but I think it's like when I saw this line, I was like, all right, well, maybe after they just got absolutely destroyed by the Lakers, we might see them as like a home dog. And instead, I see them laying 3.5 to Minnesota, who's been the best team in the Western Conference in terms of record this season. And I don't get it. I don't see it. And even if Ant doesn't play, Minnesota's plays such good team basketball, such good team defense. I really do like the spot. I think it's going to be very tough for New Orleans to generate enough offense against this Minnesota team, especially with Jaden McDaniels possibly even returning in this spot too.
You know what I needed, Joe? I needed something else to bet on this Monday slate. That's what I needed. I'm currently, if you're watching on YouTube, I am currently pulling out a power cord. Why? Am I just distracted and this is bad podcasting? No, it's because my phone's out of power and I need it in order to bet the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm tailing Joe on this. What? I don't know how I missed it. I think I just glanced over. It was like, oh, that's like right around the number. You know why? Because I have the Wolves at this number. Like this is.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
Hashtag wrong team favored. How's that ever going to go wrong?
Yeah. Like
Jim,
how do you think they played?
While I scramble to get myself to bet MGM, King of Sportsbook, to bet this. What are your thoughts on the Wolves?
Yeah, I'm pretty surprised by this line too. I'll say this. I am, you know, you said it, Matt, like you can't do a 1-game thing. And I was actually, you know, we were coming on to pod on Thursday, Joe, me, you and Brandon. And we did that exercise at the end where we talked through, you know, the committee 4 teams ago. I was pretty ready if the Pelicans looked great to have them as not the 4th team, but a team that I really wanted to talk about because I fall for this team hook, line, and sinker every time. Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, those are guys that I just want on a team. But I do think that the Zion of it and maybe the Brandon Ingram to me is kind of the epitome of how I actually feel about this Pelicans team. Like very inconsistent, really high ceiling, draws me in time and time again, tricks me by doing things like hitting, you know, those type of tough shots that really do come up in the playoffs more often. But the Zion of it is what I'm actually worried about. He looks like he doesn't care. He looks like he is like, once again, we're here again with Zion. And that has me far more worried than anything else. I think from a day-to-day basis, I'm not quite as low on them as you guys are. I still think that this is a team that on any given night, because of the like length and versatility and 3-point shooting that they do have, I think they'll be decent, but I am with you, Matt, in terms of a bigger scale fear of them in the postseason. The consistency is just not there. And unless Zion somehow does stuff that we have really only seen in one season from Zion, and even that season, that was a long time ago before he put on all this extra weight. It just, you know, I'm putting on extra weight. I know it's I'm not a professional athlete, but it's hard to keep that off when you keep getting older and older. The metabolism slows. So until I see it from Zion, I'm not out, or I'm not in on this Pelicans team as much as I had hoped to be, because I love so much about them.
Joe's the one you got to worry about because he's got the kiddo on the way, so he's gonna pick up that sympathy weight.
I know. I'm gonna have to just like transfer it to dumbbells or something. It'll be fine.
So I will say that for me, this is not like like the Wolves are dogs to the Pelicans, therefore, and the Pelicans look like clown show fraudulent shitbags, so therefore we must bet. No, like this is a Wolves bet for me. This is just like, no, Minnesota's been like,
Yeah, they've been
I mean,
awesome.
for me, it's like it's just a number play. Like even with Pelicans home court where they've been good, I have this Wolves -4. I'm getting 7 points of value, and if you say like Anthony Edwards is still on the injury report, questionable, sure, accurate.
Yeah.
Anthony Edwards can't be worth that much to the spread.
And
Anthony Edwards and
and
Jay McDaniels just can't be worth 7 points to the spread. So I
yeah.
gotta bet the other side here.
Yeah, that and I mean New Orleans, like they got Trey Murphy back, which is great for because they needed a little bit of 3-point shooting. They don't take a lot of threes. They're scoring in the paint.
Yeah.
You're not scoring in the paint against Rudy Gobert. It's just not happening. Yeah. So like it's a bad matchup anyway, I think.
Let's go to Jim, and let's go to, before we dive into exactly how much I love the Brooklyn Nets and the later matchup, let's go to Dallas Mavericks under 227. Jim, give me the cap.
Yeah, so this is one of those I love where I'm eyeing an under for both teams and they happen to play against each other. So I'll say it's more for Dallas, so let's wait on that for a second. But I will point out that Memphis, that defense is starting to come around. I think that was part of the floor of this team that we thought before the season. Now the offense has been so bad that they haven't even been able to turn it around, even as the defense has gotten better. But they're now a top 10 defense by cleaning the glass. In the last 2 weeks, they're 7th. So that is very much trending in the right direction for Memphis. But Dallas is the side of this I'm really interested by. They got no Kyrie now. No today or on Monday, there's no Grant Williams. And Dallas quietly of late, their offense has slipped. They're the 3rd ranked defense overall for the season. That's all the way down to 10th for the last 2 weeks. And inversely, they've been playing better defense. It was 23rd ranked. It's up to 13th. So we have a lot of combination of factors of kind of recent play that are all pointing towards an under here. So I really like that from both sides of it. And then add the no Kyrie kind of cherry on top. And I think this is a great look at an under here.
Memphis' defense has been better. I'm on Mavs -2. So I'll kind of give my cap on that, which is like, you're right. The defense has been better. And like that's what we thought would be good back in those halcyon days when we all were very bullish on Memphis. Remember those days? Like when Brandon gets done.
I don't remember that.
When Brandon gets done with football, we're gonna have one of those like 15-person Zooms, and we're all gonna go around in a corner, in like a Zoom. We're all just gonna go around in a circle, and it's gonna be like a meeting of like, hi, my name's Matt. I bet on the Grizzlies to win the division and to be the 1 seed at 30-1. And we're just gonna get like, I honestly do want to do like an episode that kind of gets into what, because I've asked a lot of people this of, was that cap wrong, right? Based off of the knowledge that we had at the time, which was that Steven Adams was going to be able to play. Like, was that cap wrong or not? And I've gone back and forth on it of like, well, I really thought Steven Adams would be okay. And if you're listening to this and you're like, Steven Adams is not the difference in how bad this team is and where they are, I would kind of argue the opposite. Like sometimes you need it's the Lebowski thing. He's the rug that pulls the room together. And without him, the bottom of the floor falls into a pit of hell where demons stab you with hot force. And so that's all beside the point of this game. The Mavericks have really dominated Memphis historically over the last couple of years, especially when Luka plays. Like Luka loves beating this team, and they beat them when when Memphis was without everybody else and Luka sat. And so I kind of think that they're going to get back in on this one. So for me, this was a pretty easy one to lay the points, just because I don't think Memphis is better, but Memphis also isn't good. I will say, unfortunately, like I have this projected slightly over, built off of the fact that I even with like the defense being better, Dallas's floor has been so high. Can you talk to me a little bit? I want to follow up with you there. When you say that Dallas's offense has slipped a little bit, what has been like the big thing? Have you noticed anything in particular that has slipped with them that you can kind of identify? No Kyrie for this game, which feels also relevant.
Yeah, well, in all fairness, they have been without a couple of players. I know Hardaway was out of the lineup for a little while, and he is about as empty a bucket as you can find, but he is a bucket, and he's also very key for that bench unit as well. which kind of has those like rangy young wings who can be very hit or miss on certain nights. So I think he is kind of like that stabilizing factor that you're getting 15 to 18 points a night off the bench from him, which is pretty key for their offense. Now he is back in the lineup now, so that's maybe a counter to that. But I think that I'd have to dig in a little bit deeper on their opponents in this to see if that was also played a role in it. But I think combined with the lack of Kyrie, the way Memphis's defense is trending, and the way Dallas's defense is trending as well, even if there's a little bit of noise in the offense there, I think overall I still like the under here.
Okay. When Luka plays since the bubble, versus the Grizzlies since the bubble, 7-1 straight up. Dallas is 6-2 against the spread. That's a tiny sample, but I will just tell you, like, these two teams don't like each other. Like, there's as is the case with Memphis and I don't know, most teams in the association, they don't like each other. And so I think a lot of it is the jaw stuff, but even beyond that. So I just think that Luka's probably going to put up like an insane number here. And I'll go ahead and lay the points with the Memphis Grizzlies. Let's go out to Joe. And let's go to, you got a prop here, Nikola Vucevic over 33.5 points, rebounds, assists, Joe.
Yeah, so I like this against the Bucks, and a large part of this is I like the matchup for him straight up against Brook Lopez. I think that Vooch is kind of one of those guys where Milwaukee, number one, like if he's scoring, like it's not like the end of the world, right? Like that's something that they're fine with. He can stretch the floor. He's been actually pretty good on making his threes in this matchup too. So I was considering the over 1.5 threes versus the PRA versus the points. And in this spot, I actually liked the combo prop. He's over this in 7 of his last 10 regular season games head to head against Brook Lopez. And he's hit that in both games this season. Additionally, when we look at this, we know Zach LaVine's hurt. So Zach LaVine's going to be out for an extended period of time. So there should be a little bit more offense going his way. And part of why I wanted to leave the rebounds in, even though it's against a team like Milwaukee, I've envisioned DeMar DeRozan will probably take a little bit more of an offensive load, especially because Milwaukee's been so poor against guards. DeRozan takes that like mid-range type of jumper, which is going to contribute to the fact that he's probably going to have some misses that are a little bit like closer to the basket, and that's kind of a rebound that I think Vooch can kind of pick up. So I like the over 33.5 PRA here. I think he can score. I think he gets a couple of those like dishes just by being a little bit more involved in the offense. So I do like the spot at the 33.5 PRA.
In a related bit of news, I'm on the Chicago Bulls plus 11 here. And this is a combination of the spot in the moment combined with a trend that to me is really important this season. Basically the Bulls without Zach LaVine look like they want to be alive and playing basketball. And that makes me sad as somebody that likes the way that Zach LaVine plays basketball. But don't worry, because he's going to get a shot with your defending in-season tournament champs come playoff time. But like they're playing really well. Like Kobe White's playing really well. The bigger reason that I'm actually on the Bulls though is this is a Bucks fade. I'm trying very hard not to go overboard with Milwaukee. Okay. Milwaukee's not a bad team. Milwaukee's not going to miss the playoffs. Milwaukee is not going to be a lottery team. Giannis asks out, et cetera, et cetera. Like Milwaukee's going to be fine because they have Giannis and they have Dame and they have Brook Lopez and they have Chris Middleton. And that's really good. And they have some guys on the bench that aren't playing necessarily great right now, but they'll be okay. And the Adrian Griffin thing. No, the Adrian Griffin thing's bad. It's bad. And everybody knows it. Okay. You go to these like NBA events and like people talk about the same stuff. It's bad. Okay. Now it might be temporarily bad and he gets better. Okay. One thing that's been true, if you've been listening to Buckets for a while, you know that one of our favorite things to do historically is smash the Bucks in division games. Bud was so good at them. They were absolutely incredible under Mike Budenholzer. From 2019 until this season when Bud left, because he was asked to leave by security. When the Bucks had a division game, the Bucks went over that span 51-12 straight up and 62%, 37, 23, and 3 against the spread versus opponents who you play all the time. All the time you play those teams. And yet they were absolutely dominant versus those squads under Mike Budenholzer. So how have they been in division games under Adrian Griffin, you might ask? 2-3 straight up, 0-5 against the spread. All right. I totally get that, like, people are going to be like, divisions? Really? Really? Divisions? I don't even know what the divisions are. Fair. Think of it this way. These are teams that you play more often. And the teams that have played Milwaukee more often, who usually have been absolutely destroyed because Milwaukee knows how to play them, instead, they are 0-5 against the spread. So I'm grabbing the 11 with the Bulls, Jim.
Yeah, actually, this was on my long list as well, and I was with you. I was on the Bulls side of this as well. And I'll say one thing. You mentioned Kobe White. That's another one that I had debated throwing out there. Kobe White has been playing amazing. Last 9 games, he's averaging 22, 5 and 5, basically. They played the Bucks during this stretch. He got up 20 field goal attempts. He had 23 points. His points prop right now is at 19.5. I like that. I also might even do like a little step ladder, get him at 25 as well. I think he's one of the quickest guys in the league, and we've seen how the Bucks backcourt has struggled this year defensively against guys like that. So I'm with you on the Bulls, and I think Kobe White, if you want to do a little, put together a little correlated parlay on that, I think those two are pretty tied together. So I'll be looking at that as well.
I'm going to have like 800 bets on Monday night. This is so exciting. And I've been better about being more discerning, but these spots are really good. Jim, let's go to you and let's hit the Isaiah Hartenstein rebound escalators. Give me the cap.
Yeah, for sure. So Joe mentioned this in the beginning. This is Mitchell Robinson being out. So Hartenstein last game had 16 rebounds. So Mitch left midway through the game, and Hartenstein saw his minutes jump. He saw his rebound opportunities jump. He does not play at the same time as Robinson. So this is much more his minutes going up than the actual opportunities when he's on the court. But when Mitch was out last season, he averaged 8.2, but he had a lot of high ceiling ones, which is why I'm going to be looking at some of the extremes here. In less than a month that he was the primary center, he reached 14, 14, and 13 rebounds. And then if we get a Jericho Sims prop somehow, I might be looking to play some of his stuff. I think Tibbs isn't going to be looking to play Hartenstein a lot more than 30 minutes, which leaves, a good 18 to 20 minutes for Sims. So I'll be looking at both of those guys, but Hartenstein in particular, while Mitch is out, I think the rebounds last year when Mitch went out, I tried to do the PRA with him. He just doesn't score all that much, to be honest. His assists might pop a little bit. So maybe if you really like a rebounds and assists, but he's content taking 2 field goal attempts a game. It's the rebounds that really pop and maybe an assist or 2 here. But I think with Mitch out for, might be a little bit here, that might be a prop that I'm going back to the well on for a little bit.
Yeah, I like that spot. I think you're right in terms of Hart getting the minutes. And Sims didn't play against Boston when Mitch got hurt. So I think that's definitely notable. I liked Randall in this game too for similar reasons. And in part because I think the matchup is pretty good against the Raptors, who like their size, like the Knicks kind of match up like interestingly, I think size wise against Toronto, and Randall has been like great in these spots. He's got 6 straight double doubles, some big assist games as well. But he's even got he's got like 19, 15, 13, 14 over the past couple of years for his rebounds. So I think that Randall, who's looked great recently, I'm curious to just see where his lines come out. I would probably be leaning for like a PRA on Randall as well. I think it's probably like a little bit more of like a well-rounded game for him in this game, in this spot against the Raptors too. So I think you can get both, to be honest. And Brunson's
questionable as of now. So yeah. That might be really, that's probably why the props aren't out yet, but that could be a usage, that could be a monster game from Randall. I like that a lot too.
Yeah.
Staying away from the side because of those injuries that you mentioned. I don't want to mess around with the side or total on this. I will say this. I will point this out that the Knicks, when they face an opponent who they average more offensive rebounds per game than, which is you would imagine most of the league, they are 56% against the spread in those spots, and they do in fact grab a higher average of offensive rebounds.
I'm a
than
little
front of the
worried
line.
though that Mitch is one of those guys that
Yep.
like he's going to be. They say he's
Right.
worth a point, but I think he might be worth a lot more. And I might even look
Yeah.
at. I know we just said a bunch of escalators. A Knicks team total under honestly intrigues me because he does so much heavy lifting, getting them second chances. That I think that's the kind of guy that the spread struggles to account for.
Okay.
Great point.
Joe, do you want anything on the Randall related props? You kind of talked about it, but do you have anything else in there?
Yeah, just kind of like I'm looking for a PRA, especially if Brunson's out. I think he's obviously going to have an even bigger offensive load, but either way, I think that this is a good matchup for him head to head.
Okay, it's time. Well, first, I will do this one really quickly. I'm on Orlando Magic -2. So they're playing the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is a duplex spot. They played on Wednesday, and the Cavaliers randomly got it together. It was really funny because the Cavaliers led by like 19, and I was like, what the hell? I guess the Cavs are good again. And then the Magic came all the way back. And I was like, nope, the Cavs are the Cavs again. But then it was just late enough for the Cavs to get the win. But the Magic are home now, and they're favored. And that changes the dynamic quite a bit. This, by the way, the Orlando, I've been looking at offensive rebounds quite a bit. And Orlando is 10-5 against the spread this season when they have an offensive rebounding advantage per game. And the Cavs, surprisingly, because they play a lot of 2-on-ball, are not great on the offensive glass. So, like, this is actually a pretty good spot. There's a bunch of trends that back Orlando here. Orlando's been one of the best ATS teams overall, but also this has been a spot where teams that are favored and then or that are on the road and lose and then they come home, they do tend to get right once they face the same opponent. So if you're on the road and you lost the last game and you come home and you play that team within a week, the numbers are basically 53% against the spread, which is not necessarily like, oh my gosh. It's more that in this spot, it's enough for it to be profitable on a pretty wide sample that you're pretty good in those kind of spots. I liked Orlando in that first matchup because I have them power rated better. I have an edge on this number. And so I don't necessarily like Cleveland's really inconsistent. So I'm going to go back to the well here and I'm going to lay the 2 with the Magic again. Joe, should I leave this one alone since I got it wrong the first time, or is this a good spot for Orlando?
I like it too. I was on Orlando last game. Literally same thing. And I was on Paolo stuff, and Paolo crushed, right? But then now, even in this matchup, Mobley's going to be out, so that's a pretty significant injury for Cleveland to be dealing with too. So I think it makes a lot of sense to go back to Orlando. They've had like plenty of time to like sit on this one, stew on it, and be like, we're going to come out firing, like we're winning this game.
With this season home court adjustment, I make the 7, which is heavy. But if I were to like kind of tamp it down, I would still get this to -5 with how Orlando has played at home. They're 9-2 ATS at home this season. They've been really great. Jim, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, ironically, this was yet another spot that I had as on the long list as well, and I was with you guys on Magic. I kind of, in my mind, was looking at something that Joe said as well. I think the Mobley factor is pretty big. They also are going to be missing LeVert off the bench. He's pretty dynamic off the bench. We kind of talked about that with Dallas, and how that kind of props up their offense off the bench. Cleveland very much the same. Their bench unit is not great. They really rely on LeVert for that bench scoring. So I'm with you as well. So I can't talk you out of it. Sorry.
Can't talk you out of it. That's a Jayism. That's like money's on the pod. Nobody more like Jay than Jim Turvey. I'm on Spurs Rockets under 224.5. That's a model play. I just have it projected down at 219.5. Houston's defense has gotten itself together. They're rough on the road, but they're so good at home. And they're coming off of 2 really good wins. And they're starting to get more momentum again. And the defense is back, and they're rested. And there's just a lot of reasons why I don't think San Antonio is going to be able to get the score up on the Rockets. Like, the Rockets are not a great offensive team, but they're a very good defensive team. And so everything kind of matches up here. There's a lot of trends to support San Antonio in this spot as well. All right, Jim, it's time. You know who my favorite team of when I started looking at stuff, I love the Brooklyn Nets. I love this team. They shoot a shit ton of threes. They cover all sorts of numbers. The number one team against the spread. I am buying high, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Nets plus 5.5 versus the Knicks. What are your thoughts on this one?
I am walking there right next to you. Yeah, against the Kings. Yeah, I'm in lockstep with you on this one. This is probably my favorite side of it. Is my favorite side of the day. I make it nearly a pick'em, like you said as well. Brooklyn, you point out they're the best team against the spread for the season as a whole. They're also the best team against the spread in the last 2 weeks. So this isn't some kind of stale trend we're getting here. They've won 6 out of 7. One thing I thought kind of funny. So Mikal Bridges. He started the season a little slow, and actually the other day I was listening to a big name podcast out there, I'll put it that way, and was saying that Bridges, maybe he wasn't quite what we had thought he was, and that was true for the first 10 games, and I'll say it was true that the game that this player played against said big podcaster's team, but I think maybe he zoned out a little bit after that because since then Bridges is averaging 26, 6, and 4. And has looked every bit the kind of key piece that we thought he was going to be last year. Having Claxton back is massive. The Nets are really fun. They're like a top 10 team by most metrics now. Adjusted net rating, they're 11th, but by their overall record, they're 8th. Simple rating system right around there as well. So I think this Nets team is really flying under the radar again, and a team that when they're healthy, and I don't even think they need Simmons to be healthy. I don't think any of us was thinking that Simmons was going to be included in what constitutes healthy for the Nets. Yeah, they're fun. They're really pesky, and they're the kind of team that can fly under the radar for a while in the NBA, which is really hard to do, the betting NBA. So yeah, I'm going to be all over this with you. I'll probably take money line as well. I think it's a great spot for a ton of value on Brooklyn.
My numbers do not like the Kings. Do not. And there's a little bit of bias, I think, in there because mine's a little bit more weighted to half court offense. But a lot of the advanced metrics are kind of screaming that the Kings are not as good as their record. And what happened was they kind of started off and they weren't good, and they were without Fox. And so when Fox got back and is averaging 30, everyone's like, they were good all along. They just needed De'Aaron Fox. But they've started to wobble a little bit. And now it looks much more like, no, like they just may not be that good of a team. Not that phrasing is important here. I'm not saying the Kings aren't good. I am saying I don't think that they're as good as the record indicates. My power rating in particular, I'm giving him a 3-point manual bump just to offset how much my numbers are warning, this team blows, warning. I'm like, no, it's fine, computer. It's okay. We're still going to make them a plus power rating team. But even then, I do have this projected like Jim at a pick'em. So to go back over a long list of best bets for the Monday slate, I'm on Magic -2, Spurs Rockets under 224.5. I like Bulls plus 11, Nets plus 5.5 versus the Kings with Jim Turvey. Joe's on the Wolves plus 3.5. He likes Nikola Vucevic over 33.5 PRA. Randall props as well in that Knicks matchup versus the Raptors. Jim is on Hartenstein rebound escalators in that matchup versus the Raptors. He's also on Nets plus 5 with me, and Dallas Memphis under 227. You should have enough to bet now. We have given you enough to bet now. Let's wrap up the IST. Let's talk a little bit about the in-season tournament. So Los Angeles Lakers get the win on Saturday night. I don't remember. I got a worse number on Hallie because I always get the worst of the numbers. It's basically like Jim and Joe and Brandon in a separate group chat find a great number, and then we come on the podcasts, and I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to bet that. And then they have a way better number than I am. Not that I'm hurt. But they had 70-1. I had, I think 42-1 on Hallie and a half unit. And so I was I just hedged immediately. I hedged in game. There was a book that was offering in game the in-season tournament odds for the Lakers while the Lakers were mopping up the Pelicans. And so I just hit it and hit it and hit it over and over and over again. So I hedged effectively out of it. Joe, as a resident Tyrese Halliburton super fan, What was your approach with your big 70-1 ticket on Tyrese Halliburton for in-season tournament MVP?
So I did the same thing that you did. I saw that it was live and I just hedged it. And then I just, there was a MGM actually had -120 for LeBron to win MVP. And I was like, there is not a chance that it's going to anybody else. I was like, I don't care. Anthony Davis could have the game of his life and it's not going to Anthony Davis, which is quite literally what happened. So like, I just wasn't really worried about it. I hedged very significantly because I thought that was such a bad matchup for Indiana. And like I wanted normally like I wouldn't want to hedge as much as I hedged. I wish I hedged more, honestly, so that I would have won more like if LeBron won than if Hallie won. I didn't do that because I was like, if this happens, I want to be able to tout this ticket. So like I didn't go that far, but I hedged pretty significantly. I wanted to bring back because I had a quarter unit to win 17, so I wanted to bring back like 8. So it was a pretty big hedge, but I did, it just was that spot was so bad, I thought, for Indiana against LeBron and the Lakers. Just everything about that was such a disaster scenario for Indiana. That's really why I hedged it, because it's like I don't normally want to give back when I get such a good number, but it seemed to be, it would be like malfeasance almost to not have hedged a bit there.
You have to be so confident. That's my thing. Is like I'm always hedging because I'm just never that confident. I'm just never going to be like, no, this is the right side. I feel absolutely good about this. Jim, did you have a Zion ticket as well? Like most of us did?
If it makes you feel better, I whiffed on Halliburton entirely because I think the whole thing got hatched. Like maybe I was like traveling or something. I don't know, but I missed Halliburton entirely. So I was rooting for it to happen because I like my friends and I like my friends to have money. But I actually was on the sidelines for that. And I was rooting for Zion because I did have a Zion ticket from before the season. And that I did not hedge. I was irrationally high on the Pelicans and once again, irrationally low on the Lakers. So I actually didn't have many hedges. I watched what turned out to be not all that entertaining of a final without a whole lot of betting stuff on it, to be honest.
So the Lakers were going to win that game for a lot of reasons. The Pacers couldn't hit a 3 because the Lakers played really physical. They did an excellent job. If you want like X's and O's, like talk about the Lakers and how good they are. They were the only team that was like, hey, what if we just like didn't let Tyrese Halliburton carve us to pieces? Like, what if we like, I don't know, stop Tyrese Halliburton? Which no one else figured out. Like Boston and Milwaukee were like, what do you mean? We're just going to play him straight up. And he destroyed him. And the Lakers went into that game and are like, look, we're just going to play super aggressive at the level of the screen because we have weak side rotation from either LeBron James or Anthony Davis. And having those two quarterbacking your back line is so important. That backline rotation, if you're going to play aggressively at the edge and pick and roll, you have to have perfect execution. It's got to be timing and communication to be able to call out when you're the low man cutting under to help on the short roll and to be able to call out where the rotation needs to come. And they were on point every single time. LeBron was perfect on every single, and it's not just the timing on those, because like that's schematic. It's also about the way that you challenge, because you can challenge Miles Turner on a rotation or Isaiah Jackson, who was pretty good in this game, or any of these other guys, Obi. You can make the rotation in terms of timing, but if your technique isn't good, if you're not physical without fouling, they're still going to pick up points. And the Lakers were marvelous at that. That said, the fouls in this game were out of control on both ends, and it was like a sluggish drag of a game, which is exactly the opposite of what the kind of game that Indiana wants to play.
Yeah.
Indiana can't exert their like Indiana's thing is no matter what, you're playing at our pace. You might beat the shit out of us because we have no defense, but we're going to play fast and loose with a lot of threes. And instead, the officials were like, well, what if we just like took 2 dribbles and then we stopped the game? Like every single time. And it wasn't like one side or the other. There was a bad stretch in the second quarter where the Lakers got a lot of bad calls. There were calls in the third quarter I thought that were pretty bad against the Lakers. But overall, that type of game, I'm not saying that this is like the Pacers weren't going to beat the Lakers anyway. They had no shot if this wasn't going to be a variance game, and it was unable to be because of the way that game played out. To wrap up the Pelicans very briefly here, Jim. I was with you. I was like, the Pelicans are the best team in this Western group. They're the best team. They should win this. And so I hedged with like LeBron MVP once he got to Vegas, like once he made it to the semifinals. But like I was pretty tentative because I was like, I think the Pelicans are better. And as we talked about before, like the Pelicans were so unprofessional in that game. Like that was an unprofessional performance. And I don't care if you have an unprofessional performance on a weekday. Like the Pelicans benefit from that a lot because if like the Kings and Mavericks have spent days in New Orleans and then have had terrible games versus the Pelicans, guess why? And that stuff happens and that's fine. But this was like a major stage. This was an opportunity for you to win $200,000 at minimum, if not $500,000, and two, put yourself on like a stamp of like, no, we're a team you have to deal with. And instead, the Pelicans were just clown shows. It was embarrassing how they played, how they competed. And so, like I said earlier, like Jim, like I was with you. And it's not just that I had high hopes and were dashed. It's the way that went. If they just had like a normal bad performance and lost by 12, fine. But I just can't take this team seriously if this is who they're led by in Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram.
Well, 1,000%, and I think it really is interesting on both sides of that. Actually, I agree with you 100%. And I earlier this episode we were saying from a big scale picture, I am now I was really high on the Pelicans, and I really am hesitant to talk about them as a Western Conference winner or finals winner. But what I think is really interesting is I think it does speak to the Lakers' ability to, against some of these lesser teams, be they younger teams, be they kind of less focused teams, those are the type of teams that I'm really going to try to target. Like we talked about this on Thursday. This Lakers team is now a team that I officially am coming around on in one sense. Against the Nuggets and the Clippers of the world, I don't think that muck it up is going to work as well, and I still don't think that they are in that tier of the top tier of the West. But I'm telling you right now, if the Lakers play the Thunder in any round of the postseason, every smart hipster, sharp angle out there they're going to be all over the Thunder. The numbers are going to love the Thunder, and then every dum every like very square person's going to be on the Lakers. I'm going to be in lockstep with those dums and squares because I think that's like kind of the perfect team for the Lakers to muck up what the Thunder do. The Thunder are going to be so much more inexperienced. I almost am begging for this series because it will give me at least a little bit of an opportunity to win back some of the money I keep losing on the Lakers because of how they play teams like this. I think that's like a dream matchup to bet Lakers in a spot where I think sharp money would be on the Thunder. And I think actually the Lakers would be kind of a square but smart play because of their style of play and the experience and all those factors that this Lakers team seems to have in spades.
Outclass is that's a tough word for it, but it's more of the Lakers are going to have a hard time versus teams that are in their tier. If you're as good as the Lakers and if you are as prepared as the Lakers in terms of like high intensity basketball, they don't match up great. They don't have great shooting. They don't have great performances. Anthony Davis usually doesn't hit jumpers. Like Miles Turner's not going to foul out of every game. They have trouble on the interior. This is a really good matchup for them, and they played awesome. Like Davis, this is the best game I've ever seen Davis play in person. He was absolutely phenomenal. That said, when I think they are going to face a couple of teams or if they face some certain teams, I think that they're going to have a hard time if they can't just outclass them. And we saw that the toughest team in the tournament against them was the Suns, who were on their level, but they were on the road and they weren't able to get it done. And in part because they were missing Bradley Beal. But even then, like that's an okay matchup for them because I don't know how good the Suns are, but you mentioned you mentioned the Nuggets, and that's really the only team in the West that you can be like, absolutely, I know that they're on that level. Yeah. Maybe Minnesota can prove it. Maybe OKC can prove it, right? Like maybe OKC can prove it because I will say, like, I think OKC is way better coached. I think they're way better coached, and Shea is a much more of a professional than Zion and BI.
Well, yeah,
in terms of their preparation, execution. Zion's really what I mean by that. BI's professionalism is fine. I'm just always kind of like, okay, BI's going to dribble around and then take a tough contested jumper over two dudes, and This is not sustainable.
Yeah.
Joe, Kev, what were your impressions from the Lakers winning the IST?
I mean, I thought it was obviously impressive, right? Like they just smoked everybody. I do think it was interesting. Like I kind of had a laugh because I was watching the post game media and they were like asking LeBron. And I'm like paraphrasing, but they were asking LeBron like how he felt about the team, like could they contend in the playoffs, and he was like, "It's December, like like we have a lot of steps, like it's too far to go." Blah blah blah. Was very very cagey in terms of what he was saying, and it was like I was like, when I'm hearing this, all I'm hearing is like, I'm happy we won this. It's awesome we won this. This is important. It matters. And it should matter going forward. But also half of the roster might be traded for Zach LaVine in a week. like that was literally what I took from that. So just because of the way he was dancing around the issue so much.
Thank you, Cam Reddish, for making yourself more valuable as a trade piece for Zach LaVine.
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. Cam Reddish is clutch. He's not going anywhere.
I love Cam Reddish, actually.
I can't stand him.
Look, I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was hilarious when they were starting him.
Yeah.
He's been really good. The
defense
great. Has been good, and he's been hitting threes. He's been really good. So I will kind of put this on the other side. I put 2 bets in the Action Network app on Sunday morning when I got back to Colorado, and I bet the Lakers 18-1 to win the NBA title, and I bet Lakers Sixers in the finals matchup. Everyone that listens to the buckets knows how I like the finals matchups. That's at 70.5 to 1. Let's go. Look, I guess here's the thing. I wrote about this on Action Network. For me, the reason that I actually bet it was, one, my numbers have liked the Lakers. Like I got a lot of shit for a tweet where I was like, hey, I've got the Lakers actually like 4th best in the league. And then they had some sort of embarrassing loss and everybody was like clowning it. And then now I'm like, oh, like this, they got healthier. I am not somebody that's like, well, we got to get healthy. No one's going to be healthy in the NBA regulars. Like no one's going to be healthy. Like Andrew Nembhard was out to stay for the Pacers. Who? Well, look, when you're the Pacers, Andrew Nembhard really matters. And just like for the Lakers, like Jared Vanderbilt really matters. Rui Hachimura really matters. The thing for me though is it was proof of concept. Is that when they got to high intensity basketball, what the Lakers want to do works. And there's a lot of like when LeBron talks about the steps, you're right that there's trades in there. There's also, I think, an understanding from his perspective of, like he talked about habits. I think on some level he also knows like he's got to stay healthy. He's got to make it through another 4 months of basketball of him and AD being able to like play. They've both got to be healthy in the playoffs, and that's been a very tough hill for them to climb. However, for me, it's as simple as I have them projected to be a top 3 seed in the Western Conference right now. And so the question here, I think, is, well, do you think that's going to hold or not? And my thing is, I don't think it's any more or less likely than anybody else. I have serious questions about Denver. I have serious questions about Phoenix. I am ready to bury the Golden State Warriors here in a minute. Like, there are not juggernauts at the bottom. I'm waiting to catch up. And so I think the Lakers are live, and I have proof of concept. Like, concept worked for them. So, Jim, I will go to you. I think this is a good value on the Lakers right now. Maybe I'm buying high, but for me, this is like it's an inflection point. They're either going to use the IST as something to boost them into the second half of the season. And like, I'm probably not getting the best of the number, but when I analyze things, I was like, I do want to get a position on the Lakers now, having the extra information of proof of concept works. Does that make sense as a reason for why I put money in on the Lakers to win the title?
Yes and no, I think. I am, even though I just kind of said I am, waking up begging for a Lakers Thunder series to bet the Lakers, I am still pretty low on this team, especially as it comes. I do think you just said it. You're kind of buying high. Like the moment right now, I think that if anything, they're gonna, LeBron clearly cared about that in-season tournament. I think if anything, we might see a little bit of a lull in the season from them, and people forget about their ceiling. And to be honest, I just don't have them at that level that I want to be betting a future on them as a whole, because I see it as proof of concept that they can muck things up and they can beat some young, inexperienced teams. but I don't really see it as proof of concept that they can win another big tournament, because these 3 games that they got in the single elimination games, we talked about the insane shooting that they got all in season tournaments. They were shooting 30% before, they're up to 45% in the in season, and then in the championship they didn't have that same level of crazy luck, but they got the best AD game that you've seen live, and a season high for points. You said knocking down mid-range jumpers. To me, that isn't a full proof of concept. I am still lower on this team in general. I'm going to pick my spots with them. I really will like them against some of these other teams in like a series, but I think the West is deep enough and talented enough that I don't really want to be on their futures right now myself.
I think a lot of this for me is it's a fade where I've got the Wolves as the best, or I actually have the Thunder right now as the best team in the conference. And we talked about like the inexperience, right? Like they haven't won a playoff series.
Yeah.
If they go in as a top 3 seed and they're favored and they play some veteran team, whether it's the Lakers or somebody else, like if it's 3-6 or 2-7 Thunder versus Clippers, how are you gonna feel? Like if the Clippers are healthy, which I know is always an if, like you've kind of talked about the inexperience factor. The Wolves are the other one, and it's like, look, the Wolves are excellent, and I think that they're great, and we bet the hell out of them. They're the anti-Grizzlies, and that they're the one that we hit on. We were like, we love this team, love the division, love their overs, love their all overs, and they're paying off. They look exactly like it. Do I consider the Thunder and the Wolves to be like serious, like title contenders? And I'm like, probably not. I don't know if I hope so. I think it'd be an awesome story. I would fucking love like a Thunder. Give me Thunder Wolves in the conference finals, and I'm a happy man. That's not the arc of NBA history. And so the one that you're going to keep coming back to here is Denver.
Yeah.
I will have a spot where I want to bet Denver. It's just not now. The market right now is still sticky as hell on. Nope, not buying it. The Nuggets are still really good. Nope. Yeah. Nope. The Nuggets are the best team. Nope. They got off to that great start. And I'm like, look under the hood. The Jokic Murray minutes are not awesome. The Jokic Murray Gordon minutes are not awesome. And it's like, yeah, they're not good now, but they'll be good come April. But by that time, the attrition will have hit their regular season win record, and we will get a better number on them. Don't get me wrong. I will have a Nuggets position later. I like them to beat the Lakers. But right now, the market is kind of telling me like, no, the Lakers won the IST, but they're not serious. It's Denver. And I'm like, that's closer than the market is kind of indicating.
Yeah.
I want to hit you guys with a couple of other bets I made on Sunday, but I want to make sure that we have time for this. So I want to give Jim the floor to talk about Clutch Player. He's got a breakdown on actionnetwork.com and in the Action Network app. Clutch Player of the Year is something that you can actually bet. There is one player in particular that he's going to talk about that I have bet that I think is not stone cold. That's a terrible phrase that in our industry is a high value prospect right now to be betting at an absolutely ridiculously stupid number. But Jim, give me the lowdown on what you think about Clutch Player of the Year.
Yeah, so I'll be relatively brief here because I do think people should check out the article. I think there's some good stuff in there. But part of what I said in the article is I want to wait until this in-season tournament because I think that this in-season tournament, I don't think it's going to be the deciding factor, but I think it could be a deciding factor. And so there's really 3 names that I'm looking at here at their current prices. And if you don't know this market, which you probably haven't memorized the Clutch Player of the Year award market off the back of your hand, but Dame is a very heavy favorite. He was before the in-season, their loss in the in-season, he was about plus 150. That's down to about plus 250. But 3 guys, Halliburton is 15-1, LeBron James 10-1, and Mikal Bridges 50-1. So I'll talk through these 3 real quick. But just before I do, let me use as an example why I don't want to be on Dame right now. So he, as of a week ago, he was leading the NBA in clutch points by a healthy margin. Now, flash forward 1 week later. So that was when I wrote that article. He had 12 more clutch points than anyone in the NBA. And that was a pretty heavy determinant of who won the award last year when De'Aaron Fox won. Steph Curry went absolutely bananas in games that were defined as clutch in the last week. And now Steph leads because he had 23 clutch points in the last week. So this is very volatile. It's very early in the season to be betting a favorite. Dame has had a lot of clutch success for the Bucks this season. It's part of the reason that their record's probably a little bit better than it maybe deserves to be. But I'm not going near that favorite right now, especially with, they just lost in the in-season. Whereas Halliburton he's now up to 5th in clutch points. If we look at total for the season, tied with LeBron. Both of these guys had great runs in the in season. Both of them had big moments. Halliburton, especially, that game in the semifinals, I think is really going to stick in a lot of people's mind as kind of his like a rival. His dad courtside going nuts. Him having those dagger threes. Him hitting Dame with his own Dame celebration. That's the kind of stuff that's will stick in a voter's mind at the end of the season. And then Mikal Bridges is really, we talk a lot about building portfolios and grabbing guys who, we see being in the top 5 to 10 later on in the year so that we can leverage those plays. He's right now 50-1, despite being second, or I guess he's now third because Steph had such a crazy week. He's third in the league in total clutch points, and he's second in field goal attempts. I don't see Cam Thomas really hasn't had an impact on his usage in the clutch either. Even in the games that Cam Thomas has been around, Mikal Bridges has been the guy. He hit a game winner the day that I released that article. It was one of those like great timing. I was like, oh, this is very nice. So you can still get him out there though at 50-1 in the market. So those three guys, Halliburton, LeBron James, and Mikal Bridges, I think are all at really good numbers. You can build yourself a portfolio that then if Dame does hold on to it, and he's something like plus 150 with a month ago, we're like, all right, let's cash these in, get some money on Dame. But for right now, those three guys are really the ones that I like.
So in the fourth quarter or overtime, in the last 90 seconds to tie or take the lead. So Steph has the most points on clutch play where you're inside 5 points in the final minute. Okay. The problem though is like those actually aren't the highest of the high leverage plays. It's like the Warriors are down 5 and he hits a 3 to make it 2 and then they foul and he does it over and over and over again. They're 6-6 in those clutch games because the Warriors are going to be pretty decent and they're not as good as you would kind of expect. Mikal's got the most to tie or take the lead in the last 90 seconds at 6 this season. You mentioned like that game versus the Hawks where it's like, yeah, he hit one. What serendipity? No. He hit like 4 in like the last 10 seconds. It was crazy. Nuts.
Yeah.
He is absolute onions. He is stones. So I bet Mikal based off of Jim was like, hey, how do I look this stuff up? And I was like, oh, you do this and this, and then we get this. And I was like, holy shit, Mikal's got all these buckets. I got to get on Mikal. So that to me, I think is the best value here. The Hallie stuff, I think is an interesting one. Braun is another interesting one, but in general, I do think that Mikal Bridges is probably the best value on the board, given that Steph probably will tail off. This will be very volatile, but I actually think that Mikal has a good I think the Nets are going to play a bunch of close games, Joe, and I think he's going to make a lot of them. It's cool to see him kind of stepping up.
Yeah, no, I like the Mikal bet, especially at the number. I like Hallie. My problem with Hallie is that they have no more national televised games. So it's like it's hard to have the moment.
Farewell.
It's hard to have the moment when they don't have any more games. So that's one of the problems. That's really like, I think with Jim's point saying like the IST was like a spot for him. It's like, yeah, maybe now people will like pay attention. Maybe you see a couple more clips on on the news or like whatever, but like it's definitely like a tough spot to like carve out this like clutch award when like it feels so moment based as opposed to maybe like even stat based. And it's like if you're not on TV, it's hard to get those eyeballs.
I did a bunch of numbers on Monday morning flying back and then made a bunch of bets once I got back to Colorado, based off of my projections off of power rating. And so basically you can take a power rating and you can extrapolate it into expected wins. And then what I do is then I adjust it off of what your actual record is now. So it kind of compensates for, even if you've underperformed so far, here's what you should do in the remaining games that you have, which is I think in it. And so I looked for some differentials in what I was looking for was I wanted to find teams who by my numbers are going to go over or going to outperform what the market expects, even if they're behind the 8 ball or if you're betting the under ahead of the curve in actual wins. It kind of provides an opportunity to be like, yeah, they won these, but over the course of the season, there's a good chance over the next 60 games for them to regress. Quickly, I bet an over on Orlando 44.5. There's one of those in the market at plus 122. look, the Magic are not going to be a 50-win team, but I do think that this team is tracking with their defense, and they have been so good without two starters. And like, I'm a guy that often says like, hey, injuries don't necessarily matter as much as you think that they do. Getting Wendell Carter Jr. back instead of Goga Batadze, as good as Goga has to matter. Orlando's got trade chips. Jalen Suggs has taken a leap. They're awesome at home. I'm always worried about those December teams. I talk about the mirror teams, but I don't think Orlando's one of them. I genuinely, like, I'm not betting Rocket stuff because the market is pretty online with them. But Orlando, I think they're going to win 40. If I am even a little bit conservative on them, I still think like 47.5 should be where the number is. I get a plus number on them. Do either of you object or support that play on Orlando?
I love Orlando. I'm with you. I like the spot. I think that you could either take that or even dabble a little bit with winning the division. I'm not sure what the number is, but I think that both of those are probably in play.
Jim, it's time. I looked at my numbers. I did all the number crunching. I did the shooty hoops number crunching, and I've got the Washington Wizards as absolute dog shit as they have been, as frustrating as they are, as I am manually correcting them down because I think that they are so bad. I still have them projected for 30 wins this season, which is they're not going to hit 30. But there's a 24.5 in the market at plus 260. And at 2.6 to 1, I was willing to take a little bit of a taste on it. Look, I actually have one more thing on this. This is this is not just a numbers thing. I talked to a few people this weekend, and I was asking about the teams and like the ones that are heading in. Yeah, they think they've got something, or they are just like, this is a tryout year. And I'm still working on some of those. What I've heard with the Wizards is they're comfortable with their trajectory. There's not going to be a coaching change. There's not going to be major trades. They're not going to they're not going to make all these major trades. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, but Matt, they're garbage, so they're not going to get any better because they don't think that they have to. You're right, but here's the thing. Continuity matters a whole lot. And if they're going to sit anybody in the back half of the year, guess who it's going to be? It's going to be Jordan Poole and all that money. And Jordan Poole not playing probably helps. Yeah. Jim, I think there's a little bit of value here. Don't just play the over. Take something like this at 24.5. That's a really low number for a plus 260 that I found in the market for them to get to 25 wins at plus 260.
Well, it's important to have a personal brand, and my personal brand is Washington Wizards, baby. So yeah, of course I'm going to be with you on this. I think that by adjusted net rating, they have been a little bit unlucky, but this is something we talked about. And actually, when I saw it on the doc here from you, I wondered if you were going to say something almost the opposite of what you just said, ironically, because before the season, one thing I had talked about is like I wanted to eye Wizards win totals throughout the season because I thought some of their more likely players to get traded were some of the players that were going to be holding them down. We talked before about how it's the starters for the Wizards who are truly terrible. If you look at the starters versus bench net rating splits for the Wizards, it's the starters who kill them. They just start off terribly every game, and then the bench is actually kind of fun and spunky, and has a little bit of over 24.5 plus 260 them. So I think Jordan Poole, unfortunately, has played so heinously that he has played himself out of any potential trade. But I still think there's a couple of guys who are maybe clogging up the rotation who could be smaller moves for the Wizards here and potentially open up for fun younger guys. Like you said, maybe Poole does get just the bench at some point. I think that would help them. He also almost can't play worse than he has been playing. Like I think he is not a good player. I don't think he's a serious player, but I think he's a little bit better than this. So I think this is almost the opposite of the Lakers. I think this is like the perfect buy low on the Wizards. Now, again, I have been, we talk about being tied to your priors. Being low on the Lakers and too high on the Wizards is definitely my priors. So you kind of baited me with both of these. But I at plus 260, I think there is a little something to like there. The biggest worry is that they just pack up shop at some point and, they're not worried about getting wins. So that probably is the biggest worry.
But by your admission, if they pack it up, that means that the guys who are playing better are playing more.
Exactly.
I will say the one guy I think that I do think actually gets moved is Tyus Jones. I don't think they're going to want to commit the money. Like Tyus is looking for a starting job, making a lot of money. and his agent has to be absolutely just losing his mind because he has like one of the worst net ratings and like plus minus in the league. They're getting killed in his minutes, and that's gonna, as much as like that's not gonna matter a lot in contract negotiations, but like some GMs will be like, well, okay, I can't be like paying X amount a year for a guy who literally lost the most in his minutes last year. You don't want to be that guy. So Tyus Jones is one I think might move on. We'll wrap up here with 2 Western Conference futures. Oh, Joe, you have a Wolves thing that you want to talk about real quick. I mentioned them earlier and didn't give you a chance to. Do you have something to add on the Wolves?
I mentioned this. I mentioned the division last week on the Friday episode at plus 180. I like them. I kind of like them for the 1 seed too. You can get that as high as like plus 240, and 60 plus wins is plus 680 in the market, which I think. I think that they probably need to get to 60 wins to have the best record in the league, right? Or to maybe even be the 1 seed. So at plus 680, you have a cut, and for the 60 plus, I think you get a couple more outs there. If they continue on the current pace that they're at, they would win like 65 or 66 games. So this gives you a little bit of room for some regression. And like I said, we're betting at the top. It's tough to say like they're going to be the team, like this 17-4 team for the rest of the season. Like it would be like a historic run basically for this team. But I do think the number at plus 680, given where we are so far at 17-4, a quarter, 25% of the way through the season, I don't think it's completely unreasonable as like a sprinkle if you kind of take this progression upwards.
This isn't an either or. This is instead a tandem bet.
Yeah.
If you want to bet the 60 at 680, you need to also bet Chris Finch Coach of the Year at 320.
Yeah.
Like there is no scenario in which the Minnesota Timberwolves win 60 games and Chris Finch does not win Coach of the Year unless Mark Daigneault wins 62. Like that's the only scenario in which that happens.
Yeah.
Honestly, like we'll talk about this more next week. A very good Coach of the Year cap right now is you should be asking yourself which of the two between the Thunder and the Wolves, who's going to win more games. And you should have that at least as part of a betting position. You can bet other guys if you think they're going to, get in the conversation, but Daigneault is number 1 right now. He's plus 280 in the market at one book I see. And Finch is plus 320. I think Finch has more sustainability than the Thunder. That may be just I don't want to get my hopes up too much about OKC because God, they're so much fun. But that's something I think to consider. On the other end of this, I put 2 bets in on teams to miss the Western Conference playoffs. I bet the Kings at I got a plus 255. And I got the Warriors at plus 205. I've already bet the Warriors in preseason. I bet them again. I'm not like, yeah, they're going to. I'm just like, the market is still very reluctant here. Putting these at 2-1, that's a considerable sign of skepticism from the market. Like, that's the market being like, yeah, I mean, I know that like they look like garbage and they can't win close games and they look soulless and dead inside and they're losing the Steph minutes, but there's still only a 33% implied chance that they're going to miss the playoffs. I just think it's higher than that. I don't think it's like, God, I will say I think it's probably more likely than not that they miss. And I know that sounds crazy, but when I look at the numbers and part of that is probably going to require a team like the New Orleans Pelicans to edge them out in a play-in game, right? So that's part of the cap here too. I have them projected right now at 10. Like I have them as the 10th best team. So in the Western Conference, I have no choice here but to go in on them. And Kings are a similar deal. I have Kings 8 right now. But the thing is like I have Kings 8. Number 9 right now is the Denver Nuggets, who are playing like garbage. That's where they're currently power rated at. If I were to do like a full season adjustment, Denver's way up there. Like Denver's going to be fine. Denver will probably finish with the top 4 seed. That said, that bumps the Kings down a spot if the Nuggets go over them. This just gets me into a position where I do think that there's value on them at any number with a 2 in front of it and a plus for them to miss the playoffs. Jim, that's just where I'm at.
Yeah, I think of the two, I mean, I really love the Kings one. I'm really with you on being low on the Kings from both a short term and long term perspective right now. The Warriors, I'm a little bit more hesitant, and you kind of touched on the reason why. I think because that 7 to 10 range right now is so much different than we're used to when we think of historically betting make or miss playoffs. Are you a top 8 seed? Now there's the play-in tournament, which is an environment I would really like the Warriors in, especially against a clown team like the Pelicans. That's like a peak, Warriors are topping the Pelicans in that game. So I would wonder, the potential of them being in the play-in as a bet. Now you're not going to get as good a number or a seed thing or a win thing.
Yeah.
So I can't completely hate it because I am also a little bit skeptical of these Warriors. I just think that I feel like they're likely to finish in that 7 to 10 morass, and I'll like them in that game. But you can hedge out. There are ways to get around it. But I at that number, I'm in on the Kings. I'm definitely, I think I'm going to bet it right after this. The Warriors, I'm a little bit more hesitant.
But what if it's our Grizzlies?
Oh man,
yeah, I got to see something from the Grizzlies.
like a sign of life there. Like,
Yes, need proof of life before they do it.
Yeah.
Joe, do you have thoughts on either one of those?
look, I kind of like both, to be honest with you, in large part because just based on like where they are in the standings, the Clippers have looked like they're kind of getting it together. And
good.
I think they're going to be fine. So that's like another spot there. And, like the Rockets, I think are like good enough to just like stick around. Like they're well coached. Like I think they're just going to clog this up. This is not going to be a scenario, especially for the Warriors. I don't think it's going to be an easy to climb the West scenario. Like I think it's going to be very sticky in the West just because of the talent there. And like with the Timberwolves and the Thunder having such hot starts, right? It's like even if they regress, like that's a lot of passing you got to do to get by them. And like it's really more like if the Timberwolves and the Thunder come down, maybe they go to 5-6. And then it's like, well, you're not going to pass them then. So I do like the spot because you could wind up in a scenario where the Kings and the Warriors are playing each other. And you're just going to cash one of those tickets in the play-in.
That Thunder game was another example of the Warriors were like reaching for, we're going to do what we always do, and we're going to outplay this young, plucky, and no Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is just going to rip your soul out like Shang Tsung. That's all that's going to happen. All right, that's going to do it for Buckets. Thanks for joining us on Buckets. On Tuesday, we'll be back with Best Bets for the Tuesday slate. We'll be off and running as we're back into the regular season. Thanks for joining us. You can catch Joe Delara on Twitter and in the Action Network app at Joe Delara. Jim is at Turvy Bets. I'm at HP Basketball. My thanks to David Payne, our producer, Hutton Jackson, and the video crew, getting this up on YouTube, youtube.com/The Action Network. We'll see you guys again tomorrow. Till then, let's get buckets.